Hi, Cancel Me Baby listeners. As you know, through my time in Hollywood as a red carpet reporter, journalist, provocateur, baby, you can call me whatever you want. I don't care. But as you know, I have been under the velvet rope. I've been, making out with it, even penetrated by it. Hell, I have been all types of way with that red carpet velvet rope. But today, we are going behind the velvet rope. That's right. Please welcome our guest today. This is the David Yontef of the very successful podcast, Behind the Velvet Rope. And David is, he is all things pop culture connoisseur, okay? He's been on reality TV on Bravo. He's worked for Martha Stewart. And even lately, these are just some recent guests on his show, okay? He's had Fran Drescher, Jerry Springer, Shark Tank's Mr. Wonderful, who I am quoting on IG, his savagery, okay, on the daily. Here is David. And what I love about David is that he is not afraid. He is sassy with it every now and then, but he's also not afraid to ask these people the hard questions. And I respect it. So David, welcome. And thank you for joining us today.
What an introduction was that? I'll take it. And thank you for appreciating Mr. Wonderful.
Oh my
One of my favorites. I have my favorites. He's a great interview.
100%. I mean, I've met Barbara, like kooky, right? Robert, I've met him. He's great. But Mr. Wonderful, just the savagery. I quoted him on my IG the other day because he basically was like, success cannot come if you're trying to like do all this other shit and have a good time and be having a family, like all this stuff, like, skipping around town, going to a carnival. No, you got to be laser focused. And I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. I have no life. And
that's why I love when someone like checks 1,000 different boxes that I can talk to them. And like, that's the thing. Like when he was coming on, I'm like, oh, yeah, we're going to talk about Shark Tank and TV and like J-Lo and A-Rod and Bethany as guest judges. But there's going to be a whole part of this chat, which is just business. Like let's give these people some business advice. And yeah, I mean, he was like, you have to work 24 hours if you're an entrepreneur, period. The end. There's no life. And I'm like, well, I would agree with that. Yeah.
100. And David, like you grind. I said on my Instagram quoting him, when people ask me what I do for fun, I'm kind of insulted low key. I'm like, excuse me, sweetheart, fun? What? I haven't had fun since like my prom. Okay. In 2008, like knock it off. Don't even ask me. No.
I say all the time, I'm like, if I didn't have this job as executive producer and host of the Behind the Velvet Rope podcast, you would not even know that I exist. I would not be anywhere near Instagram. I would not be anywhere near Twitter. There's nothing really to enjoy about either of them, I feel, or any of the social media platforms. I'm like, I'm here for work and it's exhausting.
Oh, I know. Trash. They're all trash, but we're going to use them shamelessly for our work. And that's what it's going to be, admittedly.
We're going to shamelessly use them. Yes.
So David, I thought that it would be fun to start off because you and I, like I said, we've been around the block and back with these peeps, with every A-lister. I know your niche too is like Real Housewives. So I thought it would be fun to do a little rapid fire because guys, this is part one. David and I are doing part one. Part two is going to be on his show. So stay tuned for that. Okay. I thought it would be fun because people ask me this all the time. And I'm sure they ask you this too. Who's the best and worst celeb? And I'm like, I hate that question. Again, insulting, but I hate it because it's like, we've had so many. It's like someone asking, what's your favorite meal? It's like, how could they all blend together? How could I possibly decide? So I thought it would be fun if we just named best and worst in general, and then best and worst in the Housewives world, and then not explain the story, maybe on your show, keep the peeps wanting more and explain what happened.
We can do that.
Okay. Is it hard on the top of your head?
No. So do you want me to tell you like my best interview or just celebrity experience? Because they're different.
I know. Experience.
I think probably experience. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of really nice celebrities I've met, but it goes to my interview. I mean, I'm Janice Dickinson. I fucking love Janice Dickinson. Because look at the name of your podcast. Like, you can't cancel me. Janice Dickinson doesn't give a fuck. She says she says whatever she wants, and it's just like, I'm like, I love you. You know what I mean? She's like, no, this one sucks, that one sucks. But she says good things too. It's just like, I love someone like that just isn't like I'm Hollywood and I'm going to follow the rules. So Janice to consent. Like I've met a lot of great celebrities where I'm like, this person is so nice. I may not be like a huge fan of certain people,
Right.
like Gina Rodriguez from Jane the Virgin is like one of the nicest people.
She is.
Like, I don't like bow down to the house of Gina Rodriguez. I love the show Jane the Virgin, but someone like that is just like everyone you talk to, you're like, no, she will literally stand there and do anything.
100%. And sidebar, isn't it funny how many people are like cancel that you've had such phenomenal experiences with, i.e. Gina Rodriguez, Leah Michelle, it goes on and on. I'm like going through my photo albums and I'm like, this person, that person, that person. And plot twist, like they are actually the best IRL. So you guys don't even know. You Twitter people are literally on another level. You don't even know.
Totally. I mean, who's your best ever?
Okay. Experience, not necessarily interview, but experience. I'm going to say Morgan Freeman. Had a really interesting, fun thing with him. Worst is a Hemsworth brother. It might not be what you guys think. So you have to stay tuned for that one.
Just what? Like total attitude?
Yeah.
I mean, my worst, and I guess worst could be construed because it wasn't like, it's not an actual interaction, but that's the thing, like Madonna, like you're not getting anywhere, anything. But I mean, it wasn't
like expected though.
Yeah. Like, and you're not, I mean, now she's so insulated, like you can't get anywhere near her, but like Madonna, it's, you know, but yeah, it's okay. I'm okay with that.
You know, what's interesting though, is I find that the OGs are sometimes like, it's like the up and coming TikTok influencer wannabes who are the biggest dickheads. And like the OGs are the ones who like Will Smith, Matthew McConaughey, like they will stop and talk to literally a person, inanimate object, the straw. It doesn't matter. Like they know. And I'm like, that's probably what keeps their success going.
It is, but I think they're just like at the top of their game. And that's why, because I've also had interactions with a lot of like OGs, like in music or like, and actors where they're not a Will Smith or a Matthew McConaughey. They like used to be there, but now look at, you know, like a Tiffany or like, think of like a B-list actor who's not, you know, huge now. They have like a lot of, it's almost like they didn't get out of like the 90s and they're still, it's kind of like you were huge back then and now you are kind of iconic and a legend, but like you're not, people aren't chasing you down the street. So like you should be nicer because that heyday of your success is over. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not being shady. I'm just like, some of them are really like out of touch with their place in the world. Honestly,
I wish I was back in the 90s because like we're going to talk about today, like the overly psycho cancel culture, like the 90s were just fun. But see guys, this is why I love David because he just tells it how it is. That's why he rocks. And he's just like, you know what, this is what the situation is. David, what a
real deal.
What about now quickly in the Housewives world, best and worst?
The best is probably, I mean, I've had some really good, like I love Luann. Luann loves me. I have a thing with like Ebony. I mean, everyone hates Ebony. Like I love Ebony as like a person. She's been great on my show. So like her, Luann, Countess Luann, she's a great time.
Okay. And guys, there are a lot of straight guys who listen to my show and they're like, bitch, you lost man Housewives. We're going to get to you too. Calm the fuck down. Your blue balls will be bursting in a little bit. I promise. So, well, maybe not. Yeah. You know, for me, I've only really interacted with Beverly Hills because I was based in LA for so long. And I will say best is Kyle and Garcelle, both same thing as they're on screen. Like what you see is what you get. I'm going to say worst is Renna.
That doesn't shock me.
Yeah. It's that diva-licious thing.
Renna feels herself, right?
Yeah. But like a little too much, a little bit, girl.
Yeah. I haven't had the best interactions with Renna. I think I've had better than most, but not great.
What was your worst, David?
Great. My worst is by far, and this person, we openly hate each other. So Jill Zarin.
What one is she on now? What city? I'm like the worst, by the way.
She's on nothing. She was on New York. She's the one like in the original, like her and Bethany. You know Jill Zarin without realizing you know her. She hates me. Like if you mention my name to her, she hates me and I hate her.
You're like, she was the bellhop in one episode one time in 2001.
She's just, it's like, get a grip on your place in the world, Dave.
No.
Like, drop the attitude.
Let's talk really quickly about, because my listeners really like the whole behind the scenes of like the controlling, curated overall Hollywood and the PR machine. Now, David, on this show, I'll go there. Like I'll call out entities as big and as scary and as psychotic as the Walt Disney Company. Like literally it goes down.
I love it.
Because you know they're scary.
All
they
the
own
entities
ABC,
are
they
scary.
own,
Yeah.
they own like everything you've ever laid eyes on. Talk about the PR machine in your years throughout. What scares you about calling stuff out? Do you have any horror stories, and has it gotten worse, especially now with how uptight everybody is?
Well, okay, two things. One, just because I interview a lot of like reality people and a lot of people from Bravo, there are a lot of times, and there's nothing I like more than like I break the fourth wall. Like when you come on my show and you're like on a reality show, we are not we'll talk about what happened on the show, but we're not talking about what happened on the show as if that's reality, because it's not. And I'm not saying it's scripted, but like I'm talking about like the real world of like what happened when this was happening, where were producers? Like I had someone from Potomac on, there was a physical fight last season. I was like, when your head was like on the table, being smashed against the table, where was Bravo? Like, was it like a 30-second count or was it like a 20-minute count? Like, I want to know when, before security interjected, how long was that? So I break the fourth wall and call out producers all the time, which in reality TV is the only thing. They don't care if you cause the most drama and this one hates that one. And like they just don't want you to like break that fourth wall, which everyone knows it exists. So I am shocked when I do these things that I'm not like called out more, because then I'll go and have to deal with Bravo and be like, yeah, well, I want that current person on my show. That stuff is never, that's right. I mean, listen, I don't try to do it, but if I have to, I have to. That's really never come back and directly bit me in the ass.
You're lucky, but you walk that line really well, like I said in the beginning, because it can be really intimidating. I mean, it's you talking to a person, you know, you have an entity like Bravo on your head, you have their publicist, you have this, and it could be like with reality TV, like you're saying, there's a little more leeway there, but it can be intimidating because you could have these people coming back going, you can't be saying this, you can't be airing this out, you can't be, you know, blowing the lid off this joint and blowing our cover. So
well, to your point, so twice I've had just two situations in these 2 years that I've been interviewing these people. Look, a lot of people come with their team. A lot of people don't realize, like, if you really listen to my show, there are different interviews I do. When it's a past person and they're not on something now, it's different. But there's a lot of people, if you listen closely, you're like, who was on the phone with that one? Like, who was on the Zoom? Yeah, of course, they're silent and you don't see them, but there are people, especially if you're currently on, where I do like a nice, soft, watered down interview because I'm like, I'm still happy to have you. This will get clicks. But only twice did I have two people. One was a Bravo show, which is over, but I mean, it's not over, but another time with Netflix. So I had someone on my show and I'm like,
Netflix could be scary too. Yeah.
So here's the thing, just 2 times with 2 people where the person was talking and they were both new to their shows. And I said to myself, you really, really should have someone on this. I didn't say it to them, but I was like, oh my God. And I felt sorry for the guest. I actually felt sorry. Like, you don't know what you are doing now. This is so huge.
You mean because they were just saying stuff and you were like, the fact that there's no publicist right now?
It was like a 1.5 hour chat. And listen, once you go down that road, I'm not backing away now. Now I'm like, now you opened a whole can that I didn't even think. So twice. And the one time with Bravo, it blew over, although the girl was like, I don't think I should talk to you anymore for a while. And I'm like, I got it. She's like, I got in trouble.
Right.
And then I felt bad because I literally felt bad for these people. The second time with a guy on Netflix, it became a whole thing. I mean, then the publicist was involved because
you're the one who will get slapped on the wrist, not the talent. Like, they'll come to you and be like, excuse me, sir, the audacity. to go this far or
but
whatever it is.
Like, listen, I mean, if you listen to my question, it could have gone one of many ways. I didn't bring it down this, like, we're not all friends. We sat around a table and cast the show, even though it's a reality show on Netflix. So that's when I was like, well, what do you mean you're not really friends? Of course I have fun, but I'm not the one that opened the door. And then it was a whole thing. I mean, because then the publicist, here's the thing, the publicist didn't even care. Netflix was screaming at the publicist. So I was like, okay, what do you want edit? And by the way, if you want me to edit a show, like, approach with caution. Like, don't start screaming at me, because I'll tell you to go fuck yourself and the answer is no, and I'll hang up. But then I was like, because you know what my thing is, like, I feel once you get that call, it's kind of like, you're not going to remember that I'm the one that cooperated with you. And I did.
No,
you're just going to
true.
Remember. And that's kind of what happened. Like, I basically cooperated, but like now, I don't know. It's not like I'm banned. I've gotten people since, but now it's like, you're never going to remember that I jumped and I did whatever you wanted. You're just going to remember there was this big drama, which really, I didn't say this shit.
Yeah. No, the only thing that Hollywood executives will hold on to harder than their most recent Botox appointment is a grudge. And I have so many horror PR experiences because I was that girl in Hollywood, you know, with my site. It was called Talk to Me. And it was not, you know, what is it like to be in this project? What is it like? No, I was getting in on some real, you know, sexy, fun conversations. But I have so many stories where the publicist would, you know, go to my editors behind my back or in person, you know, rip me 5 new assholes. So I have like unresolved PTSD. And now, I mean, outside of reality TV, because everybody's so controlled and they're so scared to slip up or do or say the wrong thing, do you get the feeling that it's even more intense because people don't want to slip up and get canceled, so to speak?
Yeah. You know, and like I deal with like the friend rush, you know, like I have plenty of non-reality TV. Right. And so, yes, I find that having done this now for 2 years and have gotten a lot of press, I now know either a question to ask that will, no matter what you answer, it's going to be a headline. I've become good at that. Like, I now know what to ask you. I don't care. Like, if it's the most positive answer, it's going to be a headline. But yes, I do. Although I just think that people, like, here's the thing. The few times I've had people call me and say, can you edit that out? It's never, I hate that. It's never the right thing. I'm like, funny. Sure. That's funny. Sure, sweetie. Because guess what? It's so weird. I'm like, you have been in the business for 30, 20 years. How do I know this? I know what the headline will be. And I'm like, what you want edited out, nobody freaking cares about. It's over here. So I'll edit that out and then it's out of my hands. But that's I do feel people are more cautious now a little.
It makes me not miss being on the red carpet, because even when I first started my site, I have so many videos, even my Morgan Freeman experience, which I'll talk about another time, but of them just like letting loose and like you're hanging out with them at the bar or something, like literally grabbing each other's tits. And now it makes me not miss it because it's so uptight. I've done a few Zoom interviews. I mean, you're the expert at that now. You've done a million. And even that, I can like feel the sense of like, it's so stiff. And playing devil's advocate though, do you see why? Because they don't want to get, you know. Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm in a position where like, I feel it's not really my job to have an opinion. So in a way, when I ask questions, it's like, I am not saying this. So I feel like if I had a show where it was like a gossip show where I was giving my opinion, who knows? Maybe I would be canceled, probably. But when this whole stuff happened at the beginning, I myself was ultra conservative about what I'm about to say. I was really scared of like, if I say one wrong word, I'm going to be canceled. Oh, it's psychotic. And the reason it bothers me, and I talk about this on my show all the time, is what drew me to Hollywood and to celebrity is how off the rails and fun and sexy it was. And I feel like this whole climate just makes it opposite of that. It's just like stiff and not in a fun penis way. Like it is just it's just a fun sucker. And that's what bugs me about it. You know, and sometimes, and I wanted to ask you this too, David, like, do we want it both ways? Because a lot of people right now talk about how the pandemic really showed how out of touch celebrities are. So they get annoyed when celebrities chime in, whether it be about like social issues and politics. But then in the same breath, we get annoyed every time we see like a PC written statement by their publicist or an apology or some, you know, or them, you know, getting canceled. So how do you see it? I mean, do we want it both ways where it's like, no, shut up. But then it's like, wait, why are they getting canceled? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I just find cancel culture to be so ridiculous and for so many reasons, really. I do. I mean, because like you have to look at the intent. Well, first of all, I don't understand. I get it. Like if you kill someone, you need to go to jail to learn your lesson. Like I understand that you're supposed to be rehabilitated and think and realizing it, but that's not really what we're doing. We're canceling people. So like Chris Harrison is now canceled with $25 million and doesn't really. So what? Like Chris Harrison got $25 million. I'm sure he was about to bring the back. I'm sure the NDA is 75,000 pages long. And he's like, I will bring this entire thing down because I will be talking 24 hours a day to every media outlet. And you know, there's bodies buried in The Bachelor. And so $25 million will shut me up. So cancel me. And the joke's on you because the ratings are going down. And I mean, I'm ready to move on. Does Chris Harrison
100.
care? So it's like, we're canceling people, but like, we're not focusing on like teaching them to learn something. And like, you have to look at the intent behind it. So like a lot of people say things and you're like, that person is not racist. Like, do you see what I'm saying? It's like,
100.
then there are people who are, it's like, we're not, it's not black and white. So
we've made it so extreme. And also ABC with that whole situation, like straight up pulled a Harvey Weinstein and is like trying to pay Chris Harrison off, to your point, to shut up because God only knows what he knows. And in the end, you're right. What does that accomplish?
This gives you an example. I had someone on my show who was like, blah, 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 blah. And like, I was the black sheep. And then I get a call and they're like, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, what? They were like, yeah. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like,
no.
They're like, well, black sheep is a term that has a negative connotation on the black sheep of the family.
Oh God.
I'm like, I get what you're saying. Like, you know, we don't call the master bedroom anymore. You do realize this in real estate. It's called the primary bedroom. Just FYI. You're no longer allowed to be a real estate agent and say, let me show you the master. It's called the primary bedroom. So I'm just like, I understand what you're saying, but there's not one person listening to this chat that is going to now go like, get over yourself. And this is not going to go viral that you're racist because you said black sheep. I swear this is a real situation.
Oh,
so it's like, you have to look at like the intent behind things. And it's like, this person doesn't deserve to be canceled because they're not. You're misconstruing this.
100%. Like there's just zero chill. The whole no one can say, that's the point. It's like, it doesn't even matter, profession, entertainment or not. No one can say anything, period. And I'm glad that you brought this up because what I was going to ask you about also is your interview that's getting a lot of press with Sutton Strack. So you guys, again, if the straight dudes listening to this are like, what?
Maybe they're girlfriends or mistresses or wives.
No.
Listen.
Yes. Like your sister wives, whatever, like they're up on it. Okay. So get the information. And also I talked about this, you guys, in my episode on appropriation. So like pull a Marty McFly, go back and re-listen and, you know, brush up on that. But basically what happened was there's this white woman on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills having a conversation about race and stereotypes with a new cast member who's Asian. And if you guys remember, I talk about how Crystal, the Asian woman, kind of jumps down her throat and is like, are you the person who doesn't see color? Are you the person who doesn't see color? Because Sutton was like, oh no, I see that. Like, I don't really want to go down this path right now. And on my show, I said, listen, I'm not Asian. I don't know the stereotypes and the, unfairness and the microaggressions Crystal as an Asian woman has dealt with, but I don't like how she jumped down this girl's throat. This is the problem. No one can have a conversation, period. And how it just makes everybody more uptight and tense. So Sutton on your show, David, said she regrets the whole encounter, right? Kind of not letting Crystal finish. And I'm not going to lie to you. When I saw that, I was like, here we go again. Someone, backing down on their word and kind of backtracking and, apologizing, so to speak. So how did you feel about it in the moment and now in hindsight, what she said, backtracking?
Well, Sutton, I have to say, is like very authentic. So like,
yes,
I'm like, okay, I liked that. She's like, she's really done work and like talked to people. I personally, right, I feel the same way you do. I am not an Asian American. I am not an Asian woman. So I wasn't offended. Like I understood where Sutton was coming from. But then I'm like, okay, well, I guess this is supposed to be a teachable moment. And I guess this is my white privilege. And like, I understand why Crystal is upset. So I'm just like, I like to put myself in this situation and be like, I see your side and I see your side.
Right.
Now okay, so I see both sides. Like, why can't you and just work it out?
Yeah.
Sutton did take it like harshly and then had all these conversations with friends of hers. So I think for her, she's like, I get it now. Like, I get why she was upset, which I got why she was upset right away.
Yeah.
So I feel like for Sutton, it was a moment of like,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
I guess
but do I think this world in general is ridiculous that you can't say anything? I think that there will be a revolt eventually. There has to be. The pendulum, I already think it is. It's just, we can't cancel the whole world.
No. I say this all the time, but I'm like, if you go back, you are going to find some sort of skeleton in everybody's closet eventually. And I guess my point is, I wish that Sutton, right, I see both sides like you. I love us being all PC, covering all our ground, but I wish that she more stood her ground and was like, I wish that I didn't get jumped, she didn't jump down my throat. I wish that we could have just like had a conversation about it. I mean, in that same episode, when I talked about this, I also talked about the whole Garcelle thing with not paying. And I'm just going to refresh you guys quickly. Garcelle, the first Black Real Housewives of Beverly Hills cast member, who I love, met her 100 times. She's great. Kyle Richards, white woman, has been on the show forever, insinuated that Garcelle didn't pay for something. And then Garcelle made it into this whole thing saying, as Black women, we get called cheap all the time. And again, kind of jumped down her throat. And on my episode at the time, I said, this is, again, it's like, we can't assume, like, I wouldn't know that. So I just feel like it has to be a little more, conversational and like grace on both sides. And the fact that we're even seeing this spill into a franchise like Real Housewives, which is so like frivolous and, everything is in and of itself,
Although, I mean, the ratings are way down for New York. So that's the whole argument that like people don't want this on their TVs and that whole thing.
I mean, the PC thing, let's be honest, is like, okay, like these conversations are making it into the mainstream. But then as a viewer, when I'm watching, I'm like, I also like want to escape all this stuff right now. And people could turn around and be like, that's your white privilege, just that. But it's like, are the ratings speaking? I mean, is it the same for Beverly Hills, David? Do you know?
The ratings, I mean, and that's the thing, like, I didn't mind this season of Real Housewives of New York like everyone else did, but I mean, the ratings are down and the comments are, we literally, I'm not paraphrasing, we don't want to see race and politics on TV. This is boring. We're not interested in this conversation. That's not me. That's just 1,000 million people and the numbers are down by like 500,000. No, Beverly Hills, because of Erica, is doing just fine. People want to talk about nothing but Erica Jane.
Oh, we're going to talk about that on your show. We are. It's kind of like, what does that tell you though? Again, it's like that question sometimes people ask, which is, does woke make you go broke? I mean, look at the Oscars, same kind of thing. So,
and I have to say, like, people slip into my DMs all the time and they're like, so behind closed doors, when I hear things, it's like, Yeah, I think people don't
Are
want
over
to.
it.
That's right. But God, they're not going to say that. And that's a whole nother
Mhm.
thing. I don't think this is what I'm trying to say, because it's all from anonymous accounts, but it's a lot. I don't think people are always as offended as they say they are. We just love a mob mentality in the world. And when you're canceling someone, yes, it feels so good because you're having a bad day. You're not as rich as them. You may not be as good looking as them. You just want to jump on that, like, fuck them and cancel them. And really, because I don't think morally people are as unhinged inside.
It's
But
sad.
it is
It's like
sad.
high school bullying. It really hits a certain way for me. I'm like, leave, I poke fun at the Hollywood elite and these reality stars all the time, but they're human too. Leave them alone. And what you're saying about the ratings is so interesting. It's like from the network point of view, I could see how they're like, oh, we're going to get shit from this mob you're talking about if we don't include this stuff. But then the ratings are dropping. So
it's like, which
is it a
do you
lose-lose?
want?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, there are people that deserve to be canceled. It's so funny because I have Perezhilton coming up on my show. He's been on like a million times. And he has this whole theory. I'm not saying I necessarily agree, but he has this whole theory. If you are A-list, you can't be canceled. That's his theory. I mean, he doesn't, this isn't paraphrasing. You will listen on this Wednesday. He says this. So he's like, look at Mel Gibson with the whole like Jewish thing. I mean, I'm Jewish. Like I personally, by the way, don't get offended by anything.
I'm the same way.
Say things against gays, Jews. Like I personally don't get offended. That's just me.
I'm the same way. I'm Jewish, a woman. I'm a first generation American on one side.
Me.
I don't give a fuck. I'm like,
that's how I feel.
Take all the misogynistic hits you want, honey. No, I'm just kidding. But you know what I mean?
By the way, Perez also says on my show that if you're really hot, you also can't be canceled.
That is so funny. That's really something to think about.
An example. I came up with a good example, like Aaron Schock. I don't know if you know him. He's like, he's like a Republican. He was like closeted, and he was like, he's gay. He's out now, but he was like all, Republican and anti-gay and all this stuff because of like the party. And now he's out. And I mean, he's literally just go and Google him. He's like, really? And I'm like, well, you have a point, because there's all these liberal guys who say, these guys who are gay. I mean, I'm gay. And I just say they're all liberals and anti-Trump, but yet they still want to fuck Aaron Schock. Like they would fuck him tonight. So Perez is like, that is such a good example. So that's his example. Like if I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm just saying Perezhilton says on my show, if you're A-list or really hot, you can't be canceled. I don't know if that's, I'm just saying that's what he's saying.
Here's the double whammy. And
if you think about it,
here's a double whammy of guys who have had, nothing like concrete, but I guess allegations, but Johnny Depp, Brad Pitt. I just saw Johnny Depp in a commercial last night, and I'm like, because I hear from one end, Johnny Depp, he did all this, he should be canceled. But then I'm like, I'm seeing him, looking hot as ever on this commercial.
I mean, right. And like, and Mel Gibson is he's still working. Like
Liam Neeson's another one, right?
You get like a minute timeout. So that's what he says.
That's a really interesting point, because I feel like people make it a left-right thing. Like people will say only conservatives get canceled, right? Like Gina Carano, yada, yada. But now I'm thinking about it and it's like, wait a minute, that's a really good point.
I just think it's like, I'm sure people are going to listen to this and be like, they're totally racist. But we're not. I just don't believe in like, and listen, I had Lady Bunny, like she's a really like famous drag queen, like from New York. She was on Liberal as Can Be. And she's like, this is she's liberal. Let's just put that out there. She's like, this is like loss of freedom. Like we are on the verge of having no free speech. And I was shocked that she went this route. And I was like, I agree with you. So, well,
that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I'm like, don't tell me what to say or do, bitch. Try again.
It's like, yeah, there are really bad people that say really bad things and that need to be examined. But like, we're lumping too much into one category. Well,
that's what I make the joke all the time, like you made at the beginning, which is like, okay, where's the double homicide that this person committed, that why they need to be in prison? I'm sorry. What,
it started.
They had a tweet from 2009. Like what? Not the same. Now it's all one thing.
It's all one thing. And yeah.
So that is I'm going to take that with me, that maybe superstardom and hotness. Like, I'm trying to think who is the most superstardom hot. Like I said, the Brad Pitts, but is there anyone else? I'm trying to think, like, what offense could they do that would get them canceled? I mean,
and I don't even know.
Hotness save you from everything. That's a real,
well, here's an example. I'm not even saying she's A-list, but she's like I said, like Chrissy Teigen. I'm not saying she's A-list, but I'm just saying like she's not really canceled anymore. Like she's already kind of fine, but she was canceled for a hot second. I don't know. I mean, that's not really an example. Perez is like, well, that doesn't even matter because she has John Legend. Like, just go be canceled.
Right.
But I don't know. It's like, who's really canceled? Like, the thing is, like, these are human beings. So unless you kill someone and put them in the ground, like, their life will go on. Like, they will have, I mean, you don't fall from like making $20 million a picture to being like on the street and like destitute. Like, there will be you'll find something else to do with your life. Like, I mean, do you know what I mean? Like, you can't stop a person. So you can try to take someone down and yeah, they're going to lose endorsement. They're going to lose things, but they're still living at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know, a year from then, 6 months, they have things. Like, life goes on for them. So if you're not teaching someone something, it's not a teachable moment. If they really have hatred in their heart, then what is the point? You're canceled. Here's a slap on the wrist. Just go sit out for 6 minutes. It's just,
I feel like I also don't like, though, the stain on their reputation and that it's ruined. And I want to ask you this too, because I mean, we've established that, you know, this whole thing is sucking the fun out of life, and maybe people don't want it. Maybe there's not as much as a mob mentality as we think, like you're saying. With that said, though, David, I know we talked about this a little in the beginning. Do you watch what you say on your show because of this? Like, how balls to the wall are you? Like, are you afraid of this mob, even if it's a faux mob?
Yes. I watch what I say on my show. Not that I have any hatred in my heart or anything, but yeah. I mean, I'm also a lawyer. I don't know if you know this. I used to practice law back in the day. So I do feel that I am one of these people that when someone does have a controversy, to me, it's like, well, it's like, why would you say that? I'm not talking about blatantly racist tweets. Like, you know, there was someone from Vanderpump Rules that said, like, I hate Asians. I want to punch them in the suck hole. This is an actual tweet and something. So this is like, he sent it way in the past. So like, that's different. Like, that's okay. Right. We have an issue here. Yes. But then when it's like, if something is borderline, not really black sheep, but if something is borderline and now the statement is being questioned in the media, I'm like, well, why would you even say that? I don't think it's so bad, but like, I do put myself in everyone else's shoes before I speak or write up my little descriptions on Instagram. And so not often, but every now and then I'll read something and I'll be like, this could be misconstrued. Or like, I mean, I'm talking like, it's not like I have to, I think it's just because I'm a lawyer. My mind thinks like that. I am always expecting the worst. Like even something like, hey guys, okay, well, that's not okay. Like, hey guys, I know it's crazy, but so I'm very anal just in terms of like, that's just how I think. So I do edit what I say, but I feel like I don't want to hear it.
Can you believe we'd be in a world where it's questionable to say, hey guys, like that's right. And yeah, I want to make this clear. Like, I'm an advocate for, you know, joking, being politically incorrect, but like saying I want to punch a certain group of people in the face, like clearly bullying hits a certain way for me, guys. So I'm not saying, you know, like that's what I mean. Like, but you know, we've gone cuckoo, like you said.
That, right. Like, how is that tweet the same as someone saying, right, I don't want to be the black sheep in the family? Like, it's just, there's a big in between. And there are people that are horrible and deserve to be canceled, but we're lumping a lot of it in.
It's too much. Before we wrap, because I talk about her all the time, like my queen of existence, regardless of if I always agree with her or not, and you have met her, is Rose McGowan. And the reason that I love this bitch is because she is somebody who is about it. Unlike so many celebrities who are wishy-washy, like she doesn't care if she looks insane. She goes against every establishment. She has called out Me Too. She has called out, you know, the government, Newsom, the establishment. I mean, you name it. And she's down there in Mexico drinking a pina colada and is like, I don't give a fuck. Now, from meeting her, David, what is your vantage point? When did you meet her?
I have met her many times.
Oh.
Now, I have to say, yes, like that's the thing. Like you look at like Rose McGowan's Instagram stories and page, and you're just like, this bitch might never work again. Now,
that's the thing.
I mean, really, it's not like the Harvey Wines. It's like she calls out, you know, she's like, well, I don't get it. Like Alyssa Milano, my Charm co-star, like you were part of Project Runway, which was hosted by like Georgina Chapman, which was funded by, she's like, so don't fucking sit there and say, me too, Alyssa, and this is your new cause. You're a fucking fraud. Like, this is how she talks. Like, you've seen it. She's calling out like, you know, and Alyssa's husband is a huge manager. And like, so it's like a huge age. It's all related. Rose does not give a fuck. But if you listen to her, really, she's just like, let me tell you, this is just the reality of how this works. Kind of like what Nicki Minaj just went through, and she had a little breakdown on it. She was like, why would I fucking say that I like was invited to the White House? Like I'd pull that out of my ass. So the thing is, these people are speaking the truth or their truth, but here's the thing about Rose. So when I met Rose the first time, it was for her book, Brave, right after this whole thing happened. And I was like, so like afraid to ask her for a picture. I mean, nothing stops me when I have to, like on my show, when I have to ask you a question, I need to ask. But I was just like, she's kind of anti all of this now. But let me tell you, no, she was so pleasant. Like she understands, like, you didn't do anything to me. Like, you're not feeding, because I thought she was going to be like, you're feeding into the fucking Hollywood machine. And like, this is why. And you want a picture for what? For your fucking selfie. And I really thought she was going to be like, there's more to life than so. No, she was like, I get it. You loved Charmed and you love my work. And like, what did you do to me? Like, you didn't create this.
Yeah.
So she was nice, actually. Like she gets that part of it. Of like, I understand why you want this.
And, you know, it's like, it makes me think that Hollywood is like the most mob mentality of them all, because we've seen it happen. I mean, I was living for what went on with Nicki Minaj. I did a whole episode, you know, 2 episodes I was talking about it, but same thing with Rose
I was
McGowan.
Like, she's going to keep going. She's going to be the new Rose McGowan. Like, she's just going to she's not going to stop.
Right. Just be committed and be about it and don't, you know, bow down. But the problem that bugs me and how Hollywood is the ultimate mob mentality is they then, you know, talk about ruining reputations. Like they then discredit or remove themselves. You know, they discredit these people, delegitimize them. You know, Kanye, I always bring up that example, same thing, you know, and kind of like remove themselves like, oh, we're not associated with that person. And that's what really bugs me. It's like Hollywood is like the Mean Girls clique of them all in that way.
I have some, I hate to mention guests before they air. I have someone coming up in the future who's an actress who was canceled. It's pretty obvious who it is, but
Gina Carano?
No, I don't even know who that is.
Oh.
But it's someone who was like canceled. And so like, I mean, listen, you look at like Antonio Sabato Jr. You know the story about Antonio Sabato Jr. who was on General Hospital, and like he was the Calvin Klein mob. You know Antonio? You know?
I don't know the story.
But he did nothing racist or anything. He is just very vocal about he supports Trump. It's like the best president to him. And he literally, I think he's now coming back because he self-funded his own project, but he literally was run out of Hollywood. And I'm not kidding you, has been like digging ditches, like waking up at 4 a.m. and working construction. And, you know, I've always wanted just to get him on my show. I'm just like, this is just an interesting story. Like these are the type of stories I love about like just fame and all of that. But I mean, like it never happened. But I think now he's like funding his own project. So, I mean, yeah, like if you're not like a brat, I mean, that goes back to Perez's statement. Like, you know, like people think, I think like you're in, you know, if people don't realize like there are 1,000 tiers to Hollywood people, like, you know, Rose McGowan is not friends with Brad Pitt. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there are the Brad Pitts and the George Clooney's and the Julia Roberts and like, but a normal person is a working, from interviewing all these people, is a working actor. And a lot of them don't have like endless amounts of money. Like, so yes, Brad Pitt isn't, he could go and never work again. It'd be fine. Same thing with, but like the average person that goes from TV show to movie, like they're a working actor. Like they could be run out of town. They don't have endless amounts of money. Like, you know what I mean? Like Rose McGowan is, even before this, is not having cocktails with Julia Roberts on a Friday night, So it's like, there's tears to Hollywood. So I don't know.
That's
like
sad. Got to protect the paycheck.
That's where it's like, it is the machine. And I mean, I get why people don't want to speak up. I get it. Like, do I think Rose McGowan is blacklisted in Hollywood? Yes, I do.
That's sad.
I do.
I know.
Who is going to work with her? Who?
I know. Makes me sad. It really makes me sad. It's pathetic because it's supposed to be a place where I always say this, but where different ideas are brought to the table, not, it's this way or the highway. So, and obviously I feel like my takeaway from this is like, people want that. They want to have more fun than Hollywood's providing, clearly.
And that's what it's like. You can't say, like, you have to say, at least this is Rose's truth. And like, she basically lost everything to go after this man who did this to her. And so wouldn't it just be easier not to, you know what I mean? And so
isn't that Me Too hypocrisy too? Because shouldn't they, in theory, like if they're all about it, all about Me Too, be like giving her the biggest like pat on the back, raise, thrown? But first,
I feel maybe one day if there's I still feel everyone could come back in Hollywood, but not anytime soon.
Now, David, my last question for you, because I have to let you go, is you recently had a former Pussycat doll on, and I talked to a former Pussycat doll who a couple of years ago, we were talking about my hair extensions that I'm wearing now, because one of them was like on her eyebrow. And I'm like, I'm sorry, my hair extension is growing from your forehead. It's fake hair or whatever. And she made a comment like, in the Pussycat dolls, everything was fake. And I was like, oh, okay. So now I talk about these themes on my show a lot, like things being fake, quote unquote, and curated in Hollywood. And like I said, with this pandemic, in this pandemic, the curtain's been peeled back and people are privy to it more than ever. They're like, everything is, perfectly sculpted, fake, if you will, like everything we talked about today. Do you think now that this has been pulled back, especially because of the pandemic, like, will Hollywood ever be the same? Or do you think people are always now going to be like, I'm onto your bullshit? Like now we know what's, really going on there.
I think it's going to be the same. And I think that people it's kind of like when you're dating someone and it's not going well, and eventually you will break up with them or they will break up with you, but you're just, this person's so hot and you really like them. And like, you just in the back of your head know, like you're 30 something, 40, this isn't going to last for the next like 50 years of your life. But yet you just can't walk away. It's like willful, like you just want to pretend. So like, just give me another year, another 6, just let me pretend this is so great. I think that people want to believe in all of, let me escape reality and just believe in it. And I think it's going to be all the same. I think Hollywood doesn't miss a beat. It's like, listen, we had a global pandemic. And in the beginning, weren't you like, how are we going to have anything? How is there going to be a morning show? How is there going to be any new TV, movies? Like there will never be something again for like 2 years. Like production will stop. What are we going to like pull things out from 5 years ago off the shelves? And but all of a sudden we have like Kelly and Ryan, like one of the biggest morning shows. We have a Zoom and now we have, they did not miss a beat. Oh, and let's do this. And let's just take every movie and put it out on Netflix. And you know what? Hollywood figures it out. So I feel this won't affect Hollywood like at all.
Yep. One word that Hollywood loves: money. It's all about money. And you know what? You're right. Maybe at the end of the day, it's like that sort of brooding, unattainable bad boy that you need to remove yourself from, but it's like toxic and you keep yourself coming back for more. I mean, that is us with Hollywood. Look at both of our shows.
You just can't, like, you just can't get enough. And like, and so like, I like to have the real conversations too, when people come on my show, and then it's just like, well, look, I mean, it's not my place, but I have people that will sit there for an hour and I'll be like, at the end to myself, I didn't believe one thing that person said, or those were all canned answers. But that's not really for me. I will push deeper, like to your face, if it's like I'm shy or scared. That's why people love my show. But it's not my place to say everything you just said is a fucking lie. But there are people, like on Instagram, someone will come on and be like, I think that person was full of shit. And I'll just say to myself, like, duh, like, bravo, like one person realized it, but it's not up to me. Which is why when someone comes on and like, when I believe you are 100% authentic, whether you are or not, if I believe it's a real conversation, I'm like, this is a great episode.
Yeah. And that's something I find myself, whether it be on the red carpet, now on Zoom, no matter where, in somebody's trailer, I hate that feeling of in my head being like, this is total bullshit. And how and when do you call it out? And is it our place? That's a good question. That is a good question. Well, David, I can't wait for part 2.
Hopefully you don't think I've bullshitted you here today.
I was actually going to say, David, I better not get a DM from you going, Taylor, edit this out or that out.
No, I don't think I've ever once asked someone to edit it out. And I've gone off on certain housewives on other podcasts and that I'm just like, it is what it is, right? Like, it is what it is. But everyone can listen to my show if they want. I always tell people, I'm like, if you hated me here today, you should still listen to my show because it's much different. It's not about me. It really is about the guest. And people who listen are always like, you don't interrupt. I'm like, no, it's not my place to interrupt the guest. I'll go and spill the tea on my Patreon or when I come here. But like when you're face to face, I will push you because we need the answers, but it's not really my place to have my opinion. It's just kind of like their truth. That's really how. So I'm like, even if I annoyed people here today, they should still listen to my interviews because chances are you'll like somebody on there.
I respect it because you're not scared. You ask the hard questions and there is always Patreon, like David said.
That's where I let it all, right. That's where I'm like, there's no interviews here, people. Now I'm going to tell you the real truth of what's going on.
Yes. Okay. Well,
so follow me behind the velvet rope.
Follow David behind the velvet rope. And you're going to want to, because like I said, we're going in for part 2. It isn't over. It's going to be on David's show. One more time for the road behind the velvet rope. David.
Apple, Spotify, anywhere you can find a podcast.
Yes. Anywhere. And no editing out. We're going for it. We're going for it.
Loved being here.
David, it was fun. I can't wait for part 2 and we'll see you all there.
See you soon.
Thank you, David. Bye.